What if I told you that the moment that you die, something leaves your body? Now, I'm not talking about something spiritually or even metaphorically, something that is physical. More than a century ago, a physician placed dying patients on a scale and waited for them to pass. What he reported stunned the world. At the instant that life ended, the body became lighter, not by much, by around 21 grams. And he believed that he had just measured something that no scientist had ever measured before, the weight of the human soul. But that experiment has raised an even stranger possibility. Is the soul even a physical object at all? Or what if it is energy? And if it is, could it depart the body in the form of electromagnetic energy at the moment of death? Tonight we explore the bizarre experiment that tried to weigh the human soul and the scientists today who are still attempting to detect it, and the unsettling idea that consciousness may be something that science still cannot fully measure. This is science of the unknown. In the early 1900s, physician Duncan MacDougall believed that if the soul exists, it must obey the laws of physics. Anything that exists physically must occupy space. Anything that occupies space must have mass, and anything with mass must have weight. MacDougall proposed a radical test. If the soul leaves the body at death, the body should become lighter. So he built a giant hospital scale, capable of weighing a hospital bed, and then he just simply waited for someone to die. What he observed next became one of the most controversial claims in the history of science. One patient lost 21 grams at the exact moment of death. MacDougall believed that he had just captured the departure of the soul. But the real mystery was only just beginning, because later researchers began asking an even stranger question. If something leaves the body at death, what form does it take? Matter? Energy, or something that science has not yet discovered? The early 20th century was a strange moment for science. Electricity had just transformed the modern world. X-rays had revealed the hidden nature of structures within the body, and physics was on the brink of a revolution. In 1905, Albert Einstein introduced the equation that changed everything. E equals mc squared. Energy and mass, Einstein showed, are interchangeable. This raised a profound possibility. If consciousness was a form of energy, then technically it would have to have mass. The idea fascinated scientists and philosophers alike. And at the same time, a cultural movement called spiritualism was moving across America and Europe. Many people believed the human spirit survived death. Seances and ghost photography became popular, but MacDougall was not a mystic. Newspapers describe him as practical, scientifically minded, as well as a good physician. He wanted something far more radical than belief. He wanted evidence. And in 1901, he began preparing an experiment to answer one of humanity's most oldest and yearned after questions. Now, MacDougall needed subjects. To measure weight accurately, the patient had to remain completely motionless at the moment of death. So he chose people suffering from terminal illnesses, particularly tuberculosis. These patients were extremely weak and unlikely to move. Eventually, he recruited 6 patients into his study. Each patient was placed on a specially constructed bed. The bed rested on a large industrial balance scale, capable of detecting changes of about 5.6 grams. MacDougall and several doctors waited beside the scale as each patient approached death. They watched carefully. They recorded every fluctuation of the scale. For several patients, the results were confusing. One patient lost weight but then regained it. Another lost weight several minutes after death. One patient died while MacDougall was still adjusting the equipment. But in one case, the scale suddenly dropped. The body had lost 3/4 of an ounce. That is about 21.3 grams. MacDougall believed that he had measured the soul leaving the body, but he wanted further proof, so he designed a control experiment. He believed that animals did not possess souls. If his theory was correct, animals should not lose weight at death. So he conducted the same experiments on 15 dogs. According to his report, none of them lost any weight. To MacDougall, this confirmed his hypothesis. Humans had souls, animals did not, and the human soul weighed around 21 grams. But many scientists were deeply skeptical. The first criticism was simple. 6 patients was simply not enough to prove anything scientifically. But the deeper problem is that death is not a single moment. It is a gradual biological process. Even after the heart stops beating, many cells continue functioning. Body temperature changes, air leaves the lungs, moisture evaporates from the skin. Any of these could cause small changes in weight. The scales themselves were also not extremely precise. They could detect about 5 grams of change. So small movements and measurement errors could easily produce misleading results. MacDougall himself admitted that the experiment would need to be repeated many times before drawing any firm conclusions. But despite the criticism, the New York Times ran a headline, "Soul has weight, physician thinks." And suddenly, the idea that the soul might weigh 21 grams became famous. But the story did not end with MacDougall. Other researchers began exploring the same question. Some tried to measure weight changes in animals. Others tried to detect changes in energy. Because if the soul is not matter, it might be energy. And if it is energy, then physics tells us it might exist as electromagnetic radiation. Every living body generates electromagnetic activity. The brain produces electrical signals that can be detected by EEG machines. The heart produces powerful electric pulses measured by ECG monitors. In fact, the electromagnetic field produced by the heart can be detected several feet outside the body. Some scientists began asking an intriguing question. If consciousness is generated by electrical activity in the brain, could the mind itself be an electromagnetic pattern? And if this pattern suddenly disappears at death, could it briefly radiate outward? The idea inspired a new generation of experiments. In 2005, physician Gerald Nahum proposed a modern version of MacDougall's experiment. Instead of weighing the body, he suggested that surrounding patients with extremely sensitive electromagnetic detectors at the time of death could be a possible way of detecting it. If a burst of energy left the body at death, the sensors might detect it. Nahum proposed using arrays capable of detecting electromagnetic radiation, particle emissions, as well as unknown energy signatures. His proposal was submitted to several major research institutions, but the experiment was never carried out. Still, the idea opened a fascinating possibility. Maybe the soul cannot be weighed. Maybe it is not matter at all. Maybe it is information encoded in electromagnetic fields. Some neuroscientists have proposed that consciousness might arise from the brain's electromagnetic field, rather from individual neurons. In this theory, neurons generate electrical signals. These signals create electromagnetic fields, and those fields may integrate information across the brain. One theory proposed is the conscious electromagnetic field theory. It suggests that conscious experience emerges when brain-generated electromagnetic fields synchronize neural activity. If this theory were true, consciousness might not exist solely inside neurons. It might exist as a dynamic field surrounding the brain. And if that field collapses at death, it could theoretically produce measurable energy release. However, so far, there is no direct evidence that this happens. Throughout the 20th century, scientists occasionally attempted strange variations of the soul experiment. In the 1930s, researcher R.A. Waters placed animals inside sealed chambers at death. Observers reported seeing a mysterious vapor-like cloud leading the body. Later researchers dismissed this as condensation or gas release. In 2001, physicist Louis Hollander weighed sheep and goats during death. Instead of losing weight, some animals briefly gained weight before returning to normal. No clear explanation was found. Each experiment seemed to deepen this mystery rather than solve it. Today, the scientific community remains divided on the deeper question. Skeptics argue that the soul has never been detected because it does not exist. They point to neuroscience, which shows that thoughts, memories, and emotions are produced by brain activity. While the brain stops functioning, consciousness then disappears. But others argue that consciousness itself remains unexplained. We still not fully understand how physical brain processes produce subjective experiences. Some physicists even suggest that consciousness may involve deeper structures of reality that current science cannot yet measure. Modern neuroscience has revealed extraordinary insights into the brain, but one mystery remains unsolved. Why does brain activity produce conscious experience at all? Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness. We can measure neurons firing, we can map brain activity, but we cannot explain why those processes produce the experience of being aware. This leaves open a tantalizing possibility. Maybe it involves something more, something science has not yet discovered. More than a century has passed since the famous 21-gram experiment. We have mapped the human genome, we have explored the quantum world, sent probes to the edge of the solar system, yet one mystery remains unsolved. What creates the experience of being alive? Because the real mystery may not be whether the soul weighs 21 grams, but whether consciousness is something that we can even weigh at all. What if it's something closer to information, energy, or a field woven into the fabric of reality itself? And if that's true, then the most important discovery in science might still be waiting, just beyond the measure of what we can measure, just beyond the limits of what we currently understand. This is science of the unknown.